He spent more than 20 years in the industry. He's obsessed with the bold idea that your smartwatch might already know more about you and more about your health than your doctor.
Information, it's everything. It's the new oil.
Apple is going to have a more meaningful impact on the health of the US than our government can do.
Everyone will be using a wearable. Probably it's going to be a pill. Probably something that you will have in your body and trying to check all time 24/7 information about your health. Wearables are the next medical device, and everyone should be wearing a wearable.
We're live and welcome to this week's episode of L.I.F.T.S. I'm Matthew Januszek and I'm here with my co-host Mo Iqbal. Mo, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. And today we're joined by Marco Benitez, a serial entrepreneur and the CEO of Rook, a health tech company that turns wearable data into real-world health insights. Marco's journey is really a fascinating one. I've known Marco now for a couple of years, I think maybe 3 or 4 years, maybe a bit longer. But he went from being a national Taekwondo champion to a biomedical engineer, and now leading a company that bridges the two worlds that really talk to each other. And this is something that we're going to talk about today: fitness and healthcare. How do we get these two worlds more integrated? He spent more than 20 years in the industry. He's obsessed with the bold idea that your smartwatch might already know more about you and more about your health than your doctor. And that's something that, Matthew, both you and I are incredibly passionate about.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here and more with these two guys that I really admire, and they know everything about this industry. So I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Well, Marco, just to start off, Mo's that little statement that you made, which is your smartwatch may already know more than your health doctor. Bold statement. Why don't you kick us off by expanding on that a little bit more?
I'm pretty sure you know that the FDA approved to use some devices as they have FDA clearance, which is amazing. I mean, it's the first time that we can see this type of trends. I started to use wearables when I was like probably in the early 2000s or even then at the end of the 90s. I was using the Polar ones, and I was using for the Taekwondo. So trying to identify patterns with my heart rate beat and all these type of things that help me to improve myself. So I do believe that these devices are improving so much, and during pandemics even more, because you start to receive 24/7 hours information and more accurate, because now the hardware it's even better. I mean, Apple Watch is doing really great, but Garmin, the hardware of Garmin, it's amazing. It's like it become more accurate, and because at the very beginning wearables were in the gray area, now they are moving towards health and being more like doctors are starting to receive this information. Some of them are starting to use this information during COVID. I remember, because we have a different business model before, we start to see these type of patterns on our own platform and see when people was started to have COVID, and we saw the temperature increasing, we saw the heart rate changing, the HRV changing. So information, it's everything. It's the new oil. I'm pretty sure everyone heard about this, but definitely I can see that in the future, or very near future, doctors are going to start using this information. The only problem I can see is it's too much information. So now we need to help them to understand the information from the wearables and the other data sources that they already have. That's the problem, what I can see right now.
Well, one, you mentioned G- Garmin, and I'm going to actually headed up to New York for the Garmin Health Summit, which starts tomorrow. So I'm looking forward to that. We also know the scale of the opportunity, which is that there's more than 1.2 billion wearables that's expected to be in use globally by 2028, which is up from about 900 million today. That is a staggering number. Given this scale and the exponential growth of wearables, only this is on the consumer side, but only 10%, I would even say less than 10% of gyms and clinics are actually using the data in a structured way. Like they just don't know what to do with it. From your perspective, what has been the hardest part about helping gyms and healthcare systems move from just collecting the data, which a lot of people are doing, but then to actually using it to improve health outcomes?
Honestly, only few people is using all the data that we are receiving from these devices. Also, as think about it as an end user. When you are collecting your data from your Apple Watch, are you using it? Do you really use that information? It's super complicated. And if you go directly to the Apple Health Kit, it's a mess. It's like trying to identify all these patterns only if you are really good savvy people and really try to correlate all this information. Probably you will make sense of something, but you need another layer. The other layer, it's like do something with that information. So from the end user's perspective, it's very difficult. And I think that's the big differentiator with, for example, with Whoop or with Oura. It's like, okay, I'm collecting all this data, but I can tell you something about this data. And now, if we extrapolate this information to the, you know, insurance companies or the hospitals, it's again, we need to help them to make sense of all this information. And I can tell you only few of them already are using for that. I can tell you like less than 5% maybe. They are starting to use this information to do something meaningful. And there is a couple of, we have some clients and partners that they are doing really cool stuff with information because that can help you to do an holistic picture of the patient. It's not only because the good and cool things about these wearables is that you have trends and you have information from your historical data from maybe 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, 6 months ago, 3 months ago. You have all this information from the past. And when you are going to the doctor, it's like, okay, you have this type of trends, but you have to narrow into them to understand everything, which is really cool. So again, too much information. It's like you have to cover everything. You have to narrow in a little bit more and start to doing something. And I think there's a lot of platforms outside trying to make all this information usable.
I want to jump to a news story about the Apple press release and the Apple Watch Series 11. From what I understand, it now has FDA cleared hypertension alerts and also sleep score features. And I was just thinking it from the perspective of people that own fitness facilities, personal training studios, so people in the health and wellness space who make up a lot of the listeners on this podcast. What are your thoughts and suggestions, or even experience from some of the people that you've been working with, in terms of how gym owners and trainers should interpret this when their members start quoting some of the data that they're receiving from these watches now?
Probably it's like if healthcare, if FDA, if they really are using this information and they think that nothing, they prove that this information is really impactful in your life, definitely the fitness clubs and coaches and all people that it's involved in the fitness industry have to take serious this information. It's like, okay, I need to take care of you. It's like another level of personalization. It's like, man, in front of you have this data that it's meaningful. It's you have a disease, you are really good, whatever that you are finding in the blood pressure, for example. So it's like now we have an actionable. It's like you have to eat well, you have to drink more water, you have to eat less, whatever. So now it's the hyper personalization and using the information that you are receiving from this Apple Watch, for example. An Apple Watch is just an example, but we have other brands that they are doing really great in terms of how accurate the information you are receiving from your device. So it's like the CGMs. You are collecting blood pressure. That really helps. And I have a lot of friends that their daughters have problems with the sugar, with the blood pressure and everything. So it's changing the lives of those people. So again, to your point, it's like finally, it's like you have to be using this information. If as a fitness coach or a fitness club, you are not using this information, man, you are done. It's you have to use it.
Well, I think it's no secret since Apple launched the Apple Watch, I think every watch except the first one, version 0, wasn't really focused on healthcare, right? And then they added the heart rate sensor, they added all these sports features. Now we're at Apple Watch 11 with the Apple Watch Ultra 3, which was ultra released last week, and this whole new OS, which actually came out yesterday. Their launch event, and I don't know if either one of you had a chance to look at it, but it was just beautifully staged. They didn't just show new features, they told stories. They had users come on and stories of literally how Apple Watch saved lives, catching heart conditions, alerting people to irregular rhythms, and even helping emergency responders locate someone who I think was stuck in the California mountains in distress. And it was just incredible to see what an integral role the Apple Watch played. Then they dropped this massive headline that Apple Watch is going to have the first FDA cleared hypertension alert on a consumer wearable, plus an upgraded sleep score. Let's unpack for why this is important. Hypertension affects 1 in 2 adults in the US. 1 in 2 adults. That is 119 million people. So you talk about trying to expand your market, you now have a device on your wrist which is going to be able to capture that. Yet only a quarter of that 119 million people have hypertension under control. And then there's sleep. I mean, this is like none of us gets enough sleep, but literally as a country, we do not sleep enough. And insufficient sleep is linked to $411 billion in lost productivity every single year in the US alone. This is why I'm just obsessed about trying to get people to focus more on sleep. Probably should start with me first, but nevertheless, I'm the messenger. If Apple can make those problems even 1% better at scale, this is now just not some tech gadget. It is true public health intervention. Apple is going to have a more meaningful impact on the health of the US than our government can do with changing legislation. And I think people are underestimating the impact of what some of these news mean, which is why I've been trying to talk about it and post about it more. And I think if I even take it a step further, when you watch an Apple Watch launch and you watch those life-saving stories, it was really emotional. And it made me think, right? Looking at that, would a consumer now trust their doctor more that they might see once a year, or do they trust their wearable more? Right? That's a question. And I mean, I would love to get both of your perspectives on that.
Just jumping back on that, like you mentioned sleep score, all of us seem to be wearing an Oura ring. So obviously we've all got some level of confidence in Oura. And from what I've been told, the accuracy of picking up the information from your finger compared to a watch is a lot higher. I don't know whether that's still the case, but what's the quality of the information that you're getting on an Apple Watch? Because both in things like heart rate from people that developing heart rate products, they'll always argue that chest is better than the wrist. Sleep, I'm hearing people argue that fingers better than wrist as well. Like, is this a little bit of hype, which Apple do fantastically well, or is this really a superior product, or are they just kind of making sure that they're ticking the boxes in all of the key areas that are important to people? Probably a question to both of you.
I love that question because my background, I'm biomedical engineer, and we build before medical devices. And on college, the first time that someone told us, it's the first time someone is taking wearables seriously, and it was Apple Watch. The Apple Watch technology is really great, honestly. It's really great. It's really accurate. They are doing amazing things. They are taking the medical devices environment and narrowing into your hands. So I'm not saying they are best than Oura or than Whoop or Polar or Garmin or Huawei, all the brands that are outside. But I can tell you that the Apple Watch, they are taking seriously the part of the healthcare industry, in the healthcare, general speaking, to the point of Mo. It's like they are changing lives. I do believe Aura is really good. It doesn't matter at the end of the day. And I tell you why. And it's because you are receiving information 24/7. So now you can do metrics. You can correlate the information. Because how accurate is this one versus this one? It doesn't matter because you have a lot of information. And now you can measure all the information that you are receiving here. You will have your own algorithms, and you will do some studies that can do correlations between what happened with the medical devices and what happened with yours. And now you can do a statement about your wearable, your Aura. So it doesn't matter at the end of the day. What is important is if you are if you want to correlate the information from one user that has a wearable, another one who is using an Apple Watch, then you will need a middleware that can make sense of all this information and clean the information, normalize the information, standardize the information so you can measure apples to apples and not apples to pineapples. That's the important thing, right?
I think, look, the main thing is you're collecting data. But Matt, I want to get back to your point for a second. You're talking about Apple Watch versus the Ring versus the band, and all these things. I would say that the data and the hardware has actually gotten to a point where the fidelity of what you're collecting is really, really good. So whether it's a chest strap, which uses one method of collecting heart rate, which has been the gold standard for decades, or if it is optical, which is what you're talking about from a wrist-based or finger-based sensor, the hardware, for the most part, is actually pretty good. I would even argue that Apple Watch has the best hardware today, but there's a big difference in how they collect the data, and this is really important. I actually just did recently a LinkedIn post on this. So Apple Watch tracks your HRV via something called SDNN. When you look at Oura or Whoop, they capture HRV via a method called RMSSD. So here's the difference. It is getting a bit technical here, but these are the two ways of calculating HRV, and this is why it's so different. So SDNN stands for standard deviation of NN interval. So it captures the overall variability across a long window. So Apple uses this because it fits in intermittent readings, but it's less sensitive for day-to-day recovery. So they take a much longer time between each sample set. So this is why the recovery scores in Apple aren't as accurate as an Aura or Whoop. Aura and Whoop use something called RMSSD, which stands for root mean square of successive differences. This captures short-term vagal tone, parasymptomatic activity, and this is the gold standard for recovery tracking using HRV. This is what Oura uses, this is what Garmin uses, this is what Whoop uses, Polar, and so on. This is measured frequently during sleep. So it's not like a few minutes, but it's literally mentioning it, tracking this all in real time. So because of that, I would say that hardware usually is pretty good for most manufacturers, as long as you're dealing with the reputable manufacturer. But if you go a step deeper, how they calculate HRV is really material. Now, back to Marco's point, for the general consumer, heck, they're okay with just getting the data. Like some data is okay. But for people like us, and maybe people who are listening, who want to go a bit deeper, understand the impact of having one glass of wine, the impact of being dehydrated, the impact of doing a hard workout and what that's going to mean for your recovery. The Apple Watch is most likely not going to meet the needs of that consumer. This is where you have to go with the fitness, sport, or wellness based wearable like a Garmin and or a Whoop or whatever. So I don't know, Matthew. Hopefully you learned something and I didn't get too technical there.
No, and just to follow up on that, to put some scale on this, because I had a conversation with someone just yesterday about it. Like in terms of penetration, and because obviously the fitness audience and people that are really looking to get that information on a high level still represents a very, very small percentage of the general population. What would you say is how would you sort of describe the penetration of something like an Apple Watch and people that are using some of those health metrics to the progress that people like Whoop and Aura have made? Is it a massive difference, or is there similar? Did you have any information or data to show like how much those two different products are penetrating the general population, and then sort of tapping into that type of information now?
I can tell you from the 50 millions of data sets that we have already, we now understand a little bit more about the end user and how they are using these devices. It's really interesting, and this is something that I am always doing every single time I'm with any presentation or whatever. I can tell you if you are using a wearable is because if you are using an Apple Watch is because you are using it for your it's a extension of your phone. That's sad. That's really sad, but that's the truth. A lot of people, they are not using the Apple Watch for only for doing sports or taking another step. But if you are talking about runners, they are using Garmin. Um, if you are a CrossFitter, they are using Polar. If they are taking care of the sleep data, they are using between Aura or Whoop. because someone told that Oura is better with the sleep data. They are doing really great. I'm not saying they are not doing, but a lot of people, they believe that the Oura Ring will give you more information about your sleep stages, which I think that the Apple Watch is doing much better. That's my only thought. But to your point, it's like now that we have all this information and all this data, and now we are correlating all this information. And unfortunately, the people who is using the Apple Watch is not too much on the sports. It's only for an extension of your phone. But now that they are changing the game, and that's why I think they are trying to move more to the healthcare industry, because it's like, hey, this is important. I can give you more information. I can help you to impact with this data to move to the next level to most point. It's like we can save lives. And that's why they are doing all these stories. In fact, I have my own reels. I do a lot of reels and these type of things, trying to share stories about how wearables are helping lives. I'm doing that in Spanish because it's easier for me, and I'm trying to help Latin America because the penetration of wearables in Latin America is very low. If you think about it, here in the US, it's way higher than in Latin America. And in Latin America, we have a big problem of obesity, which I know also here in the US is a big problem that unlock the hypertension or diabetes. So it's a huge thing over there. But again, sorry for going.
No, I think it's really good. Look, I mean, Apple has focused a lot on features. Samsung is also getting really big into healthcare. Now, I even argue that I think the Samsung adoption of phones might actually be higher in Latin America, Android's higher in Latin America than it is here in the US. They have spent so much time focusing on digital health. They've been very open to third-party partners kind of coming in. They integrate with many hospital systems, and I'm just curious. From what Samsung is doing here in the US, we tend to be so Apple centric. What do you think about Samsung's initiatives in healthcare? Do you think that they're ahead of Apple? They're taking a different approach than Apple? Would love to get your thoughts there.
That's a really tough question, Mo. But yeah, we saw this trend so hard in other countries in Latin America, also because the price. At the end of the day, the not not everyone can buy an Apple Watch in Latin America or even in any place. It's like so Samsung it's becoming also more important. There's another brand named Xiaomi, which they
Yeah.
are from China. They are so big, and the penetration over there it's really high because it's super cheap and give you a lot of information, right? So, but it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, what I can see in Samsung, they are moving really fast into the health with Europe, for example. Spain, it's becoming even more interesting for Samsung. Um, India, all these places are starting to use more Samsung than the Apple Watch. Definitely, US is the biggest market for the Apple Watch. No, obviously it's that's a truth. But Samsung, I think they are doing really great. And something that I was very surprised is they are going to start integrating medical charts that give you more information about what's the next step for them.
That's pretty impressive. Matthew, any follow-up questions on that?
Yeah, I've just put it into chat just to get an idea. So roughly, and I'm not sure how accurate this, but they reckon sort of total smartwatch users are around about 454 million. Apple 21%. Huawei, is it Huawei or Huawei 16%, and then Samsung, which are around about 10%. And then interestingly, Aura and Whoop are just relatively smaller, between sort of 1% and 2%. So I guess when you look at some of these devices that you said, and I'll be interested to see how Garmin and that fits into it. It's obviously Apple, Huawei, and Samsung are the dominant players in the market, and some of these other brands are relatively fringe. And I guess, Marco, with your company and how you integrate with a lot of these brands, where do you see that shaking out? I know Aura in particular. I was watching the Canelo fight at the weekend, and they seem to have put a huge amount of money getting their product out. It was quite interesting to see Aura at an event like that, and clearly pushing to have this mainstream. Do you see brands like that having a real challenge to compete with people like Samsung, Apple, and Huawei, and do you think they'll eventually sort of move to the side, or do you think there's a really strong future for some of these smaller players where they're offering these niche features? Just probably interested in both your thoughts on that one.
Yeah, that's a really good question because at the end of the day, what I think is that everyone will be specialized in one biomarker. Um, for me, it was very interesting to see that Dexcom invest in Aura. For me, that was a really big step because it's a big pharma and Dexcom. It's a big enterprise of medical devices, CGMs. So it's like they are taking seriously about the hardware. So for me, that was really interesting move. So I can see this world where everyone will be using a wearable. Probably it's going to be a pill, probably something that you will have in your body and trying to check all time 24/7 information about your health and all these type of things which are very important so they can make a prediction about what's going to happen with you if you continue having these X, Y, and Z behaviors. So definitely each brand will find their own path. um, Again, Apple Watch, they are doing really great. Samsung, they are doing really great. And probably they are going to start buying other companies, probably, or maybe they are going, because for example, Samsung, they also build their own ring. They have their own ring, and the other brands are doing the same thing because we start to see this war of rings everywhere from other brands. So I don't know. For me, I'm very exciting to see all of that because I am a geek when talking about wearables. I love them. I really love them. My goodness, I have four right now in my body. I have my CGM, I have the Oura, I have the Whoop, I have the Apple Watch, and I have others over there in my. I have the 8 Sleep also in my bed. And I love it. By the way, I love it. Sleep. They are not any type of sponsors, but they are really great with your sleep. Not
I've
the
got to get an 8
information.
sleep. Matt, I don't think you have one either. Maybe that's the next either sponsor or purchase we need to make is to look at an 8 sleep. Well, Marco, this has been a fascinating conversation. And if we take a step back, I think the big picture is clear. Wearables are shifting from kind of fitness nerd toys to actual clinical health engines. And I think the next 5 years is going to be transformative. The real question is how we bridge that gap, right? It's companies like the work that you're doing at Rook, you're making sure that it's not just collecting data, but we're helping inform decisions and helping improve health outcomes. Um, just for the audience here, where can the audience learn a bit more about you? Where can they learn a bit more about Rook?
It's very simple. You can find us in the web in tryrook.io. It's what we do is we interconnect all the wearables, all the medical devices outside and in one single API. So now your company can have in one very quick moment all these devices so you can extract the information. But then also we standardize, normalize, harmonize, take out duplicity. We basically clean all the data, we take out all the noise, and we deliver clean and very structured information. So now you can build what really matters. You can build this prevention side, you can build insights, you can build really great graphics that can help to improve people's lives. And of course, we have our own health score that can help you to start with something. And on top of that, you can build more AI and you can build more things. So it's very simple. I love it. What we do, we are in the back end. Probably doesn't sound so sexy, but it is when you are talking about to trying to again put Apple to apples in one place.
Apples, not pineapples. I
Exactly.
like that statement. I'll have to use that one. Mo, so what are your takeaways from this week? We covered a lot of ground again. Anything that stood out and resonates with you?
Well, I've always believed that, especially post pandemic, wearables is the biggest unlock. It's where fitness should be investing their time. Yes, they're investing their time in growth and AI and product and all the other things, but a lot of fitness companies, I think, overlook wearables and how to leverage wearable data. And to your point, it's because they don't know what to do with it. So companies like Rook and others, I think, are really there to be that like transformative engine, that middle layer. So you don't have to do a lot of the integrations. You don't have to do a lot of the work. So I'm excited to see the proliferation of wearables. I think over the next 12 months, the next 24 months, and you've got our administration, which is going to try to get a wearable on everybody. So I'm excited for what's to come next. Marco, any final takeaways from you?
I mean, definitely, it's like wearables are the next medical device, and everyone should be wearing a wearable. Definitely, I'm very aligned with that, and eventually, will give you more information. When you are having more information, then you can build the next step. Again, all with all this AI trend, which I really think it's a really good trend. AI, probably the next step is you need to build a good hardware and build a relationship and also with people and everything. But it's like the statement here for me, it's how can we help the industry in the healthcare space to start using all these devices and using for a very good purpose, which is make people more healthy.
Matthew, any key takeaways for you?
Yeah, well, you obviously shared some posts about the Apple news and Samsung. So there's two huge players making some really big moves in this space. As I was preparing for this, I was looking at what Sam Altman and Johnny Ive are yet to release, and there certainly seems to be some interest in the health and wellness space there. And I think their vision seems to be moving, almost like moving away from screens and devices, and extremely curious to see what those guys will do. But it's almost certain that there's going to be a new player on the block that's probably going to come at it from a different perspective. So, how do you plan for that? Quite difficult. Which horse do you back? Quite difficult. And I guess I kind of like what Marco's doing in some way, because it's almost like, well, you don't have to worry too much about that. He's putting everything together and providing with some information that's fairly constant. So interested to see what happens. And maybe Marco, when that's been announced, the new sort of open AI type of product, we can get you back on and get your thoughts on that at some point in the future.
I would love to. Thank you.
Well, that's it for this week. Thank you very much for listening. If you've got any comments on Apple, Samsung, wearables, and anything else, then we'd love to hear from you. You can go to our LinkedIn page and leave some comments there. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, we'd love to hear what you think, see some comments, and please share this with one or two people so we can get this out to more listeners. Thanks again, and I hope you enjoyed this episode.